All right, so let's move from that specialty area into the intermediate level. This is where we start seeing equipment, but I would say that this equipment is all under $1,500. Maybe it's under $1,000. The intermediate means it is dedicated equipment. Excuse me, it's dedicated equipment. People seem to enjoy it, but it still has a pretty big cost. Everything up to this point, nothing's over what, $100 that we've talked about. So this is where we're starting to get into that, except for the foam plyo box. That's where we're starting to get into big cost. There's a lot of advantages here too. Number one, we've got to throw it on this list, is rowers. People, especially CrossFitters, love rowers. Really effective. There's some good here. Let's talk about the good. Number one, they're non-weight bearing. That can be good and bad. The bad is it doesn't burn nearly as many calories as when you are, in fact, weight bearing. The good here is if you're working with runners, this lady over here looks like a runner, triathletes, field athletes, where you're like, they are getting enough time on their feet. This is a great way to get them off their feet and get them exercising hard. Other good, people seem to enjoy the motion, that kind of repetitive. It's almost like Zen-like. It's repetitive and it's a lot of fun. Third great thing about rowers is they'll stand up vertically. So they take up very little space. You stand them up vertically, all you have to deal with is the flywheel and the legs. And that's about a 3 foot by 2 foot rectangle. You can stuff them in the corner or something like that. When you need it, you pull them down, and they're pretty good. Another advantage, you don't have to adjust the height. As long as somebody's feet sit here, it doesn't matter if they're 6'8" or they're 5'8" or 4'8", they're going to fit on the rower and have a good time. The downside, big guys, heavy people, especially large male athletes, they can get this wheel spinning, and so they'll appear to have an easier time covering the same amount of distance as their female counterparts. So there's a little bit of difficulty there. The other issue that you got to think about is if you're rehabbing somebody who has a flexion intolerant back or even an extension intolerant back, this can exacerbate those conditions because they're doing repeated flexion extension, and it's under load. So give that some thought. I did that for a long time. I couldn't figure out why people weren't getting better in their back pain from their back pain. And I'm like, oh, I'm assigning them rowing, which is just resetting all the work we've done. So that's that. One great thing about Rowers Concept 2 is a great company. They'll repair anything. Their customer service is unbelievable. And they are top-notch company to deal with. I would buy their product before anybody else's. How about air bikes? Air bikes are good. You can see this guy he has experienced how effective they are. They're so effective that they suck. I mean, they absolutely suck. I've heard many times there's nothing good that comes from an air bike. They are a tough workout. Good news is they're very space efficient. It's self-limiting. There's nobody I've ever seen that can max that thing out. They produce a ton of resistance, a ton of results in a very short amount of time. So that can be advantageous. Plus, for the price, I think these are sitting around $800 to $1,000 each now. That price range, these things will last you forever. I think it's awesome. And a couple brand wrecking, or the downside, by the way, is you got to set the seat height and length specific for the patient or client. That takes a little bit of time, but if you teach them how to do it, it's not too bad. Another downside of them, they're loud. Like if you have a small area, somebody's on an air bike, you ain't hearing anything else going on in that space. So they are a little bit loud. Another positive is they're small footprint. They're easy to move, and people seem to enjoy them. Another positive is you can see this gentleman is resting his feet on the pegs. You can have people rest their feet on these pegs, or is he on the pedal? I can't tell. Anyways, there's some pegs up front here where they can rest their feet and just use their arms to pedal he's on the peg. They can just use their arms to operate the bike. It's really good if you're doing some lower body rehab. That's a good advantage there. So they sit around $800 to $1,000. I'll tell you what, I've owned the Air Assault bike. I've owned Schwinn Airdynes. And the one bike I hear everybody talk about that is just built better from the ground up is the Rogue Echo air bike. It's It's just night and day different. Instead of a chain, they use a belt drive. Their fan is better designed. It's a little more quiet. It's beefier. I would just say that would be the one I would buy, because I think that's one of those things you buy it once, you never have to buy it again. Rogue's pretty good about supporting their equipment, so I think it's repairable rather than replaceable. And I would buy that brand. It's the best one. All right. One last thing. This is a piece of equipment that I think is a fantastic cardio equipment that just never gets mentioned. I don't know if it's because it's goofy or I'm out on the West Coast and people, don't play hockey that much out here, although we have the Golden Knights. Night up. Anyways, the slide board. Man, you put on these booties and you learn how to slide sideways. There are so many great things here. Number one, these things, a good slide board is in the $800 range, maybe $1,000. They are a little bit tough to store. They're very long and slick. Okay. But here's some advantages. Number one, it's totally different. It's totally different. So it's not something that somebody's going to go like, I could go to your gym and do that, but I do that somewhere else, like with an air bike. How many air bikes have you ridden? How many places have them now? Unbelievable. This is totally different. Number two, it takes finesse. It's a learned habit. So people get frustrated early on, but once they get in the habit of it, they really seem to enjoy it. Number three, it's one of the few cardio, if it's not the only cardio exercise that's done in a lateral format rather than linear, meaning almost every single cardio equipment makes you go forward, back. And this is one of the few that's making you move sideways. That's great. It's different. It doesn't wear people out the same. You're getting another positive, you're getting a lot of stimulus of that, of the hip rotators and the external rotators of the hip in a different direction, right? There's just so much advantage that comes from that. I think slide boards are an awesome addition. They do take a little bit of getting used to. They take a little bit of training. But I'll tell you this, I've never had anybody bought a slide board and regretted it. I've never heard anybody say that. And once they teach their clients, I've never heard a client say, this is dumb. So I'd highly recommend looking at a slide board. They do take up a little bit of room. I think the big ones are 10 feet long. So if you only got, if you don't have the space for them, that can be an issue. But man, are they fun. They are a hoot and they are hard as hell. Doing 20-second sprints on a slide board will kick your butt. All right. Cool. You can also use them for super slick, like reverse lunges. Reverse lunges on a slide board is the best way to get the stance leg glute into serious extension. This is a great exercise. You can make a lot of things harder. Think about like floor sliders, when you add that sliding pad to make things harder. This is a great way to make things more challenging. So they have other uses.
Thanks so much for checking out these videos. I hope they're useful. We'll cover things like rehab, exercise, business model, progressions, layout, everything else that helps you build a clinic. So if you're interested, you can click here, there to get more videos just like this.